Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Abigail, if you're new, and I make videos about special needs, health issues, and feeding tubes. Um, so I thought that I would talk to y'all while I set up my feeds for the night, and I guess kind of talk about kind of like some fears that I had before my feeding tube, versus the reality of it. So as I talk, um, I'll be like doing stuff, but I thought that this would be a good like sit down video. So um first of all, when I got put on a feeding tube, we were told that I was going to be on it for like 18 hours a day, which is a lot, but um that's what we were told at first. But then um after we got it placed, the the surgeon was like, "Hey, you're gonna be on this 24 hours a day instead of 18." And I think what had happened was, at least this is the way I remember it, they were thinking like 18 hours at first would be plenty. But then somehow it got changed to 24 hours. I don't remember like if the surgeon changed his mind that it needed to be 24 hours or exactly what happened, but it went from like 18 hours to 24 hours. So basically that meant that I was going to be on my feeding tube all the time, besides to shower and to change clothes. I'm off of it for short periods of time, like whenever I'm getting it ready for the night. Like right now, I'm unhooked. But um, it was kind of like a scary thought, even to go from 18 hours to 24. Because still 18 hours is a lot. That's a long time. Um, but then our surprise when we found out it was going to be 24 hours a day, and we were like, we can make this work. You know, I think that whenever something new happens, at least for me personally, like every single like new diagnosis, um, or new issue, I guess I should say, it's really easy to have this feeling of like, how are we gonna do this? Like this is going to like completely change our lives. And I think what I was the most nervous about at first was we were told in the very beginning, um, when I got put on a feeding tube, that I was going to have to flush my tube every 4 hours. Um, every single day, like all the time, every 4 hours. And that was very stressful to hear because you don't realize how fast 4 hours goes until you're literally counting down the time. And um, that's what we heard at first. Like, every 4 hours, I need to be flushing my tube. If you don't know what flushing the tube is, it's when you put water through the extension, which hooks the extension hooks from the feeding tube button to the bag and to your pump and all that. But we were like told like every 4 hours, whatever you're doing, you're gonna need to flush your tube. And that was, like I said, a really scary like switch, because we literally thought that if it did not um get flushed every 4 hours, like that it was like going to clog really bad, and like all these terrible things could happen. In reality, um we did follow a pretty, I guess it wasn't really like a strict schedule, because the pump that I had in the hospital was different than the pump I have now. The pump I had in the hospital, it flushed itself. So I didn't have to worry about doing it every so often. But the pump I have now doesn't do that, so I have to do it by hand. But really, the 4 hours thing is not a big deal at all. How I do it personally, and I just want to say, like, this is not medical advice. I'm not a specialist or anything like that. I have a feeding tube myself, and I share my journey and my life with that. And um, in my personal experience, we have tried different things, and I can go all night and be fine without flushing my tube. I flush my tube before I go to bed, and then like first thing when I wake up the next morning, and then when I'm up for the day, I do flush my tube like pretty consistently, like every 4 hours or around every 4 hours. I set my alarm on my Google Mini. I'm not gonna say the word because my alarm will actually set on there. But during the day, I follow a pretty like strict schedule about flushing it around every 4 hours. But like at bedtime, I usually stop worrying about like the Pacific times around 9 o'clock. And then that's because I don't really want an alarm to go off like after 9 o'clock, because a lot of our family is in bed and my alarm is pretty loud. And so if my alarm was to go off pretty much after 9 o'clock at night, it would basically wake up the family. So basically, if I have a alarm that would need to be set after 9 o'clock, I just go ahead and cancel my alarm for the night. And then I don't set another alarm until that next morning. Now Sundays are different for me because I go to church. Um, I've been skipping some because right now I am in the middle of healing from a feeding tube uh, button replacement surgery. But on Sundays, what I do is I flush my tube when I get up right before I go to church, and then after I get back from church, like back home from church, I'll flush it again. Pretty strictly, we're on a pretty strict schedule right after I got on the feeding tube. Like I said, it was pretty strictly like every 4 hours. But as I've been on it for about a year now, we know that it does not have to match that specific every 4 hours. It just needs to be within like a reasonable range. Like I can go all night and not flush it and it'd be fine. Another worry that I had with my feeding tube, like before getting a feeding tube, was like what was my life going to be like not being able to eat, fully depending on my feeding tube for my nutrition. Like what is my life going to look like? And really, before my feeding tube, I have gastroparesis, which is partially paralyzed stomach, and I have a hernia. And between those two things, every time that I would eat, I would get sick like 30 minutes to an hour after eating. And so I lost a lot of weight, and I got very, very sick. And that's why I was put on a feeding tube. But like whenever you hear this, like, oh, you're gonna be on a feeding tube 24 hours a day, or I guess it's more like 23 hours because, I have times where, like I can be off of it to shower or change clothes, things like that, but I'm pretty much on it all the time. And when you hear something like that, your mind kind of goes to like, oh, how am I going to do this? Like it feels like very impossible, but having it for a year now, it has really changed my life for the better. Like not only did it like literally save my life, but like um I'm full. I I don't have to like worry about like what time it is to eat cuz I'm like, always getting nutrition technically. Now I still do have water by mouth. I can have liquids by mouth like water, but as far as like eating like actual food, I don't. I can have certain kinds of candy and certain kinds of like plain ice cream. That's about it. So like all my like actual nutrition comes from my formula. Um, I I do have like liquids by mouth like water and Gatorade, things like that, but I'm what you consider completely tube fed because I don't have like actual food by mouth. So, um, oh, and I randomly can't have peanut butter. Peanut butter is okay, but I do the few things that I do have by mouth is because I can vent them out of my G tube, and then I have a separate J tube that goes to my intestines. That's where I get my feedings from. So, I know I didn't cover a whole lot in this video. There's probably other questions that y'all have. I would say getting a feeding tube for the most part was a very, very positive experience for me. Um, I mean, like, as far as the outcome of it, it really did a lot of good for me, and I'm really, really thankful to my surgeon, the nurses, everybody at the hospital. They were amazing, and I've always like kind of been scared of doctors because of my health issues and my birth defect. My birth defect makes it where like my insides can move and stuff. So I don't know, like going to the doctor has not always been like a very positive experience for me because I I don't know, like even like little things like needles still kind of scare me a little bit because of just like the trauma of stuff that I've been through. But anyways, that's a few things that I've been through that's been like a positive experience for me. If you have any feeding tube questions, be sure that you ask me and I could do a part two. But those are like the main ones that I could think of for tonight. But thank you all so much for watching and for hanging out, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.